I get a lot of questions about Item Enchants. And I understand that the whole enchant system, the Relic Enchants, the primary and secondary enchants, and the different item rarities, which all have different restrictions, can be confusing and overwhelming. I made a crafting guide before, where I go over several important points, but the video is a bit older. So I want to make a new guide and go more in depth into enchants, the enchant amount, restrictions, and the difference between primary and secondary enchants. If we go into the tutorial section and then under itemization, you can see the amount of enchants that can roll on items. All the information is accurate besides the ancient relic one. You don't roll 3 enchants and 1 unique ability, you are getting 4 enchants and 1 unique ability. Starting at relic rarity, we are getting 1 additional enchant. The more confusing part, and what many players don't know about, is the combination of the 3 to 5 enchants. But this is not the player's fault, since the combination and restrictions aren't explained in-game. First, you have to understand the difference between primary and secondary enchants, because it's not really obvious. You can recognize the primary enchants by the bright blue square and the secondary enchants by the dull blue square. If you go to the enchant viewer, you can check out what those enchants can be. Every item is a bit different. There are overlapping enchants, but some can only roll on a specific item. And if you go to your belt equipment, there are also differences in which item you are using. For example, banners, force fields, and so on. The same is said for different armor types, and of course weapons. Let's now go into the enchant amount and restrictions, starting with relics. The least amount of enchants you can get, besides the relic enchant, is 3. Here you get at least 1 primary enchant and at most 2 primary enchants. And you get at least 1 secondary enchant and at most 2 secondary enchants. If you get a relic with 4 enchants, then you get at least 2 primary enchants and at most 3 primary enchants. And you get at least 1 secondary enchant and at most 2 secondary enchants. If you get a relic with 5 enchants, then you get at least 2 primary enchants and at most 4 primary enchants. And you get at least 1 secondary enchant and at most 3 secondary enchants. Now let's have a look at Archeotech relic items. If you get 3 enchants besides the relic enchant, you get at least 1 primary enchant and at most 3 primary enchants. And you get at least 0 secondary enchants and at most 2 secondary enchants. If you get 4 enchants, then you get at least 2 primary enchants and at most 4 primary enchants. And you get at least 0 secondary enchants and at the most 2 secondary enchants. If you get 5 enchants, then you get at least 2 primary enchants and at most 5 primary enchants. And you get at least 0 secondary enchants and at most 3 secondary enchants. Everything I have just mentioned about the Archeotech relic items also applies to morality items. Lastly, we got Ancient Relics. Their enchants are locked and can't be rerolled in the Modify tab. They always have 5 enchants, including the Ancient Relic Enchant. They have different amounts of primary and secondary enchants. And some of them even have 2 Relic Enchants. They are the most unique items in the game. Not only are the Relic Enchants unique, but oftentimes their primary and secondary enchants are unique as well. For example, you can never get cooldown or an attribute stat as a primary enchant on your armor. When you check out the Ancient Relic list on this website, you can see the Relic Enchant each item provides. But it doesn't show you all the other unique primary and secondary enchants you can get on those ancient relics. Also, whilst you cannot modify ancient relics, you can still forge sockets into them. The max level your crafted items and bought items can be is level 90. You can only get level 91 to 100 items as loot drops. If you get this skill in the tech tree, you can level up your items up to 5 times to a max level of level 90. You can never level them up over level 90. But I wouldn't recommend leveling up items often. It's way too expensive. It's really only worth it if you get an best in slot item with 6 enchants that is at least level 85, so you can bring it up to level 90. If you are wondering how to change the amount of primary and secondary enchants, they can only be changed with the Reroll All button. With the Reroll All button, you can never change the amount of enchants, only the enchants themselves and the distribution of the primary and secondary enchant amount. And as you just saw, if you reroll all enchantments on a normal relic item, you will also reroll the relic enchant. But if you use it on an Archeotech item, you cannot change the relic enchant, since this one is locked. The same counts for morality items. This means you can also not reroll the value of the relic enchant. As a bonus tip, if you were wondering how to get those high level items, you don't want to play level 100 missions when you reach level 100. You want to play the mission at least 10 levels higher. And it seems from my experience, the higher the level, the higher the chance is of getting level 100 items. So just check out some of my builds and run some 118 level missions. I hope this guide cleared things up and will help you to fine-tune your future builds. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment if you got any questions. If you want to support the channel, check the link in the description down below.